Welcome to Neon Recaps. Enjoy the video and have a fantastic day. The story begins when Ray is driving home from Thanksgiving with his wife Joanne and daughter Piri, but things aren't going too well. Ray and Joanne are having yet another disagreement, which has become quite common in their marriage recently. This time, it's about Joanne's parents disliking Ray and giving him wine despite knowing he's a recovering addict. In truth, this dispute began because they arrived late for dinner due to Ray's poor driving, and he has to remind Joanna that it is part of his recovery after his first wife Abby died in a car crash that he caused many years ago. Ray wants to make things better, but Joanne feels their marriage is doomed and that they should accept the reality. Piri, whose music player is no longer working, suddenly interrupts their argument. Ray forgot to pack extra batteries, so to keep her distracted, he sings a cute little song himself, which Piri enjoys until she announces she needs to go to the bathroom. The family decides to stop at the next gas station, and while Joanne takes Piri to the bathroom, Ray does some shopping, a coffee for himself, a soda can for Joanne, the batteries for Piri, and in a last moment of weakness, he also grabs 2 small bottles of liquor. Unfortunately, the cashier refuses to accept credit cards, and Ray does not have enough cash, so he has leave something behind. However, instead of dropping the liquor, he leaves the batteries and tells his daughter that the store has run out. The parents are ready to go back on the road, but Piri has another complaint: she forgot her compact mirror. Joanne walks to the bathroom while Ray examines the rear seat, moaning about the mess his daughter caused when she exits the car and wanders around. A building site sits next to the petrol station, and Piri is strolling too close to a found pit when a stray dog approaches her unexpectedly. Hearing his daughter's cries for aid, Ray approaches her and attempts to shoo the animal away with his words, but when that doesn't work, he throws a rock at it instead. The dog does flee, but it also causes Piri to tumble into the pit, prompting Ray to go after her and attempt to save her. Ray is comatose at the bottom of the hole for some seconds, hearing a voice tell him that they're both gone. He awakens when Joanne descends into the hole, grieving over the now dead Piri before coming to Ray to check on him. At first, Ray cannot react. He can only stare numbly at his dead daughter and push Joanne away. However, after closing his eyes, he is able to regain control of reality and sees Joanne and Piri again. The girl's arm is broken, so Ray must be cautious when picking her up to transport her back to the car, where Joanne will keep her from moving. She also wants to phone 911, but Ray remembers seeing a hospital sign earlier and claims he can get them there faster than an ambulance will. Given that this is an emergency, Ray enables himself to drive more faster than he has in years, doing extremely unsafe maneuvers to pass automobiles in front of him. Joanne, who had assumed Ray would no longer fight for his family throughout the debate, feels proud of him for this. In the hospital, Ray informs the receptionist that he has an emergency, but he is just advised to sit and wait like everyone else. This irritates Joanne, who wants her husband to be a man and get a doctor for their daughter, so Ray tries again, and this time they require him to sign his name on the entrance sheet. The receptionist also accepts a phone call, informing Dr. Bertram that another one has arrived. At least they're on the list now, and Ray can return to his seat with Joanne, who hands her Piri's scarf, making the now sleeping girl feel less heated. Joanne apologizes for snapping at him and thanks him for his speedy driving, even offering a joke that makes them both laugh, prompting Ray to add that they hadn't laughed together in a while. When Joanne's neck begins to ache, Ray walks to a vending machine to obtain a cold soda can, and he witnesses something through the door. An ambulance enters with 2 bodies and leaves with a crate of organs. Ray brings Joanne the can to put it around her neck, and seconds later, they're called to an office to fill out Piri's information while waiting for the doctor. Aside from the mandatory allergy check, the secretary had a lot of questions for Ray, including about his prior wife, who is listed on his insurance, his alcoholism, and his employment. She is also very eager on designating Piri for organ donation, but her parents decline. After such a long questionnaire, Ray discovers that this hospital does not accept his medical insurance, so he agrees to pay in cash after visiting an ATM. The secretary goes to get permission to accept cash, and after a mysterious conversation with a hospital administrator, she ultimately sends a nurse to admit Piri and take her to a bed. On his way out, Ray overhears the secretary phone Dr. Bertram, just like the receptionist, and give him all the information regarding Piri. Piri is finally on a bed, and Dr. Bertram comes over to perform the checkup. He speaks quite pleasantly to her. He keeps her mood calm. He also questions Ray about what happened, and as Ray explains, Joanne is surprised to learn about the dog, which Ray had not mentioned before. After the checkup, Dr. Bertram asks the nurse to give Perry certain medications while he speaks with the parents. Apparently, he is worried about possible internal damage and wants to have a CAT scan, which is quite expensive. Ray doesn't care, he'll pay for anything Perry needs. When Dr. Bertram asks about the scratch on Ray's head, which he was unaware he had until now, Ray dismisses him, insisting he is okay. Just a few minutes later, Nurse Volk offers Perry a plushie for distracting her. As they take her to the scan, he also says that Dr. Bertram doesn't smile for everyone. Unfortunately, only one visitor can accompany the patient to the lower levels, so Joanne takes the elevator with Perry and the nurse, while Ray goes to the waiting area to slumber. Ray awakens abruptly some hours later when another man notices he has been chatting in his sleep. After quickly checking his forehead scratch in the mirror, Ray walks to the reception counter to ask about Perry. But there has been a shift change, so there is another employee, and Dr. Bertram has already gone home. The receptionist pledges to make the required calls to find out how Perry's scan is progressing and which doctor has taken over her case, but Ray has wait for now. In the waiting room, a woman tries to make small talk with Ray, but she only makes him more uneasy, prompting him to rush back to the registration counter to find out about Perry again. The receptionist has not heard from the doctors yet, and when she searches the system, she cannot find Perry's name. She asks for Ray's insurance numbers, wondering if it was misspelled, and is taken aback when Ray replies. He'll pay with cash, which is not permitted. As Ray's forehead scrape begins to bleed, he loses his cool and demands to know where his daughter is, so the receptionist calls the lower floors again. While she's on the phone, Ray observes individuals outside throwing several mysterious bags with garbage that is harmful. Ray becomes increasingly angrier when the receptionist hangs up and tells him there haven't been any pediatric patients in the lower levels for the previous 24 hours. He makes a big deal out of it and then runs to the bed they were allotted earlier, only to discover another family is sleeping there, despite the receptionist's warnings. When he starts to act out again, Dr. Lucado, guard Jeff, and a nurse surround him and try to calm him down as well as offer their assistance. After hearing Ray's account, Dr. Lucado reviews the day's worth of documentation, but he makes no note of Perry. When Ray's rage finally flares out again, he discovers that the nurse who had taken Perry to bed was the only employee who stayed on after the change. When they bring her over, she confirms that she did see Ray earlier, but just to tend to his forehead wound, she never saw him with anybody else. Ray gets furious and makes a disturbance by accusing her of lying. Jeff and the nurse then sees Ray, administer a sedative, and remove him from the other patients. Ray behaves as though everything is going well as he gets taken to a private office, and Ray makes a promise to cooperate. But as soon as Jeff and the nurse leave him to rest, he gets up and starts looking for ways to counteract the sedative's effects. He locates a cabinet full of adrenaline, which he injects several times until he feels alert once again. He then smashes the door window to leave, walking down the hallway while ignoring the hammering in his head. Ray meets Volk while looking for his family. However, he is now dressed, for no apparent reason, as a doctor rather than a nurse. Jeff arrives to get Ray up before he has a chance to ask any questions, and they go on a pursuit through the hospital until they reach the outdoors. Ray deceives Jeff into thinking he's fled by hiding in the back of a truck, and once the guard leaves, he returns to his own vehicle. As Ray holds onto his daughter's toys and considers his next move, he witnesses a police cruiser pull up. He rushes the cops and tells them everything that happened, proving it with his ID and a photo of his family. These are serious allegations, so the police decide to look into it. As soon as they walk inside the building, they see Jeff. Despite Jeff's assurances that everything he did was done to ensure the hospital's security, the officers choose to examine Perry's bed. They also encounter Dr. Lucado, who relates a similar tale, and the police force him to phone Dr. Bertram to set the record straight. Ray argues that he saw his wife and daughter being brought to the lower levels, not the upstairs, but they ignore him and take everyone to floor 3 so they can look at the room with the CAT scanner. According to Ray's computer logs, no scan was completed when Perry was there. However, Ray feels that there's still not enough proof, and he charges the hospital with having moved his family. The nurses look through the trash for the old admission sheets and find Ray's name. However, this merely serves to demonstrate that he was by himself while they wait for Bertram to arrive. Soon after, Bertram shows in and tells what transpired earlier when Volk witnessed Ray's unusual conduct. He called Bertram for a second opinion. Ray had arrived alone, claiming to have been in an automobile accident. Ray declined Bertram's request for a head scan, saying he preferred to return to his wife Abby, who was waiting outside. The police become suspicious when Ray reveals that Abby is deceased and that Bertram stole the information from the questionnaire. Jeff then offers a way to end the investigation: the security cameras. Although Ray insists his wife is seated just under the camera and isn't visible on the screen, the recordings show him alone. Ray becomes suspicious because Jeff attributes some of the problems to the outdated technology. Officers have no justification to search the hospital, especially without a warrant, but there are no cameras within the emergency room due to concerns about privacy. Ray, who is desperate to show that he is not making things up, mulls over his options and finally decides that the gas station clerk should be able to corroborate his account. The police call the station and ask to speak with the clerk. At that point, a nurse discovers something near Peary's yellow Scarfire, and Bertram invites them to visit the emergency rooms. Even though there is some blood on it from Ray's forehead, Ray might have brought it himself, therefore it doesn't show the girl was there. Doctor. Bertram informs Ray that confusion or disorientation are normal following a head injury, leading to Ray owning it all while he insists he's telling the truth. Doctor. Jacobs is invited along by Lucado, who abruptly ends their conversation. Psychologist Jacobs says she wants to assist Ray in finding his family because everyone is concerned about what has happened to them. They have finally located a file, but it is Ray's, not Peary's. She tells Ray as they lead him into a private office. Ray becomes more and more frustrated as Jacobs presses him regarding Joanne, Peary, and the vehicle accident that claimed Abby's life. He repeatedly swears that he hasn't had a drink since Abby's death, which was entirely his responsibility. Because of her suspicion that Joanne and Peary were involved in an incident, Jacobs believes that they should investigate the construction site because they might still be there. The cops take Jacobs' advice and make arrangement for the canine team to accompany them. The gas station is closed, and the clerk has not yet been located by anyone at the police station. The dogs discover Peary's compact and some blood that doesn't seem to belong on a living person in the pit. Ray claims to the police the due of his head injury. They determine that this is now a crime scene and contact the CSI unit. Doctor. Jacobs then comes up to Ray, helping him work through his recollections until she finally realizes what went wrong there wasn't a dog. During the fight with his wife, Ray lost his cool and hurled a rock, which unintentionally hit Peary and caused her to fall. When Joanne confronted Ray about what he had done, Ray pushed her away and murdered her as well. Ray is crying as Jacobs tells him that although the mind can occasionally conjure up other worlds to shield itself from trauma, doing so merely sends Ray into a numb state. Ray eventually loses his cool when a police dog barks at him while they are about to arrest him for possible murder. It turns out that the feral dog from earlier has reappeared. Ray tackles the police officer and snatches her gun, using it to force everyone to follow his orders since he is excited to have documentation of everything. Ray steals Jacobs' keycard and locks them up in the gas station restroom, ignoring Jacobs' warning that he imagined the dog this time too. Ray drives back to the hospital, rushing like a madman. Using Jacobs' card, he enters the hospital through the rear door and makes his way through the corridor, careful not to glance at any staff member who could know him. He unintentionally pauses in front of the maternity ward at one point, and the sight of all the infants brings back memories of the evening Abby passed away. As it happened, she had been pregnant at the time, explaining why Ray's dream about they're both gone was explained by her pregnancy at the time. Ray then sneaks into the elevator without drawing unwanted notice by robbing a doctor's white coat from an office. Jeff enters the elevator as well and has his own set of keys, so fortunately for Ray, he has the key needed for the lower levels. When Ray threatens to force Jeff to turn on the elevator by removing the police revolver he had concealed in his pants, Jeff lashes out at Ray, initiating a fight. After much effort, Ray kills Jeff and takes the keys from him, enabling him to eventually get at his objective. Ray discovers the plush Volt gave Peary in a garbage bin on the lower level. Additionally, he witnesses surgeons leaving with boxes containing human organs, and when inspecting the rooms, he is astonished to discover empty corpses within. Recalling all the conversations he's heard earlier and the things he saw outside, Ray discovers there is an organ harvesting ring operating, and that his family has been abducted to be used as a commodity to be sold after hearing all the talks he had heard earlier and seeing what he saw outdoors. Ray ultimately finds Peary in this room, where Lucado is going to operate on her as he rushes down the hallway. Ray checks on his daughter, who is fortunately only asleep and unharmed, and threatens everyone with his rifle, forcing them to retreat. Joanne is also close by. She was medicated to keep her out of the way and is now dozing off in a wheelchair. Ray makes a desperate move and blasts the tank with sleeping gas, setting off a small explosion and a fire, after the doctors and nurses rush to stop him from taking his family away. Ray, who is fine but dizzy, puts Perry in Joanne's arms and they wheel out of the room, shooting Volk and anybody else who tries to stand in their way. A brief journey in the elevator retrieves the family out of the building immediately before the cops show there, and it is ultimately revealed what actually happened as Ray drives off singing to his wife and daughter. Ray had killed his family and then had a delusion that he was transporting them to the hospital. Jacobs had been correct. The bodies Ray saw were typical. He had only imagined their emptiness. The lowest level just so happened to be the morgue. He'd been completing an autopsy on a regular patient when he found Lucado, but Ray's brain had changed it to Perry, so now he was carrying a stranger in the backseat of his automobile. Joanne and the actual Perry had been in the car's trunk the entire time. Remember to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss a video. Thanks for watching.